Namaste, I'm Rubina, and I shall be talking about how I used evidence to understand the role of youth in climate change in the Nepalese context. So I'm from Nepal. I completed my master's in development studies in Kathmandu University in 2014, and at present I'm pursuing a master's in environment and sustainability at Monash University. I'll be particularly focusing how I used evidence as a student in Kathmandu University to write research papers and complete fieldwork reports. So we use evidence to inform people, right? And in this context, I used evidence to inform my teachers and my peers about the role of young people in dealing with issues such as climate change, specifically in rural areas. So my final project in Kathmandu University was titled Climate Change, the Role of Youth in the Nepalese Context. And my initial study was based on secondary sources like peer-reviewed articles and reports and gets great literature. And it helped me understand how climate change in Nepal was happening and what are its impacts, and specifically in agriculture, water, energy, and specifically age vulnerable children and youth. This is one of the areas that we visited as part of the fieldwork. This is Laduk VDC in Dolakha district in Nepal. And while the impact of climate change is not entirely evident, conversations with the villagers and young people showed that weather patterns and climatic events and rainfall patterns are changing. And this was of particular interest to them because they were farmers and they had to adapt to new weather patterns. So we use secondary sources like peer-reviewed articles, journal articles, and great literature, and primary sources like key-informant interviews, open-ended questionnaires, visual aids, and group activities, which are particularly called qualitative methods. So these are some of the tools that we used when dealing with kids aged 8 to 15, and it had to be engaging, it had to be creative. It is important to note that in spite of the fact that Nepal has the lowest emissions in the world, it is also one of the most impacted because it is geographically located right in between two rising economic giants, as well as the most polluted, that is China and India. Therefore, the transboundary effect is very, very high. And this problem is exacerbated due to the fact that Nepal has a high poverty rate, has poor access to information, and people have a low adaptive capacity in case there is a catastrophic climatic event. And this is worse for children and young adults because they're at a very vulnerable age group. For me personally, the biggest challenge was meeting and discussing and working with young people in these areas because one, you have a declining population of young people. Most of them are migrating to other areas, and you have a large population of middle-aged and elderly groups of people. And in spite of the fact that they are young people, they're disinterested. Some of them are disinterested because they have been very unfairly treated in the past, and also because they feel that that is not an issue that is worth focusing their efforts into. My biggest takeaway was that people in rural areas are very, very knowledgeable, and when we actually have a chance to work with them collectively, we can actually make a big difference given their knowledge of farming, of agricultural practices, and traditional and indigenous knowledge. Climate change is a threat to environment and sustainability. Why? Let me give you an example. Nepal is a mountainous country and is very rich in glaciers and ice caps. But these glaciers and ice caps are melting at an accelerated pace due to rise in temperatures directly related to climate change. The, the danger is that Nepal is sensitive to a glacial lake outburst flood, which can destroy entire villages. So yes, it is a threat to sustainable development. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day.